Lottie Ki Yated, daughter of a Laguna Pueblo leader, was portrayed around 1905. She wears the Kawaii attire with a belt and beaded necklaces that signal ceremonial affiliations. The scene comes from the semi-arid Midwest of New Mexico near Albuquerque when railroads began to connect markets and cultures, bringing peoples closer. In 1908, the photo attributed to Roland Reed portrays an Ojibwa woman. At the beginning of the 20th century, her people lived among the Great Lakes, alternating fishing and gathering and creating birch bark and beadwork pieces. The image suggests cultural continuity amid the arrival of modern technique. Subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are following from in the comments. In 1900, Carl Wernz photographed two young Hopi women at the window in Arizona. The hair whirls marked youth and position in the group. At the turn of the century, villages of the Colorado Plateau received artists, merchants, and travelers. Their gaze follows the world that approaches. The photograph captures an instant and anticipates changes in community life. In 1878, at Fort Keogh in the Montana Territory, a photograph shows a Cheyenne woman. The fort, built after Little Bighorn under Nelson Miles's campaign, consolidated military presence on the plains. In this context, the Cheyenne, Algonquian-speaking and allied with Lakota and Arapaho, faced displacement and sought to preserve traditions. We see Carlotta Chiwiwi with her daughters, Maria and Felicita Tura, women of Isleta Pueblo. Recorded in the early 20th century and attributed to Poli, the scene takes place in the U.S. Southwest, when New Mexico was ceasing to be a territory to become a state in 1912. The framing highlights kinship ties and feminine strength in Tiwa life. A photograph by Frederick Monson shows young Hopi girls in Sikomovi on First Mesa, Arizona, in the first decades of the 20th century. The girls wear ceremonial garments tied to the agricultural cycle and village festivals. Amid rapid transformations in the Southwest, the scene emphasizes practices that continue to unite the community and affirm its memory. In 1895, a young woman of Taos Pueblo appears among adobe walls. Signs of daily tasks join the long memory of a territory inhabited for centuries by Tiwa speakers, a crossroads of exchanges in the upper Rio Grande since pre-colonial times. Multi-story houses reveal communal life where work, kinship, and ritual sustain daily existence. In a photo from 1892, a young Kiowa woman appears in an everyday scene among her people. Clothing with beads and trade fabrics shows contact with settlers and plains networks. The focus of her gaze and the adornments suggest youth tasks and rites that sustained Kiowa life at the end of the 19th century. The image records exchanges and the circulation of knowledge. In 1897, Frank LaRoche photographed a Spokane woman. The clothing and adornments announce the legacy of the Columbia Plateau. The scene emerges in a transforming Pacific Northwest. Railroads and markets advanced, while the community preserved rituals, beadwork, and the art of basketry, weaving continuity amid change. A 1904 photograph in present-day New Mexico portrays the Corn Maiden, a mythical figure of the Pueblo peoples. At the turn of the 20th century, the scene exposes the centrality of corn, daily sustenance, guide of the agricultural calendar, and ritual offering. The image reveals bonds between myth, work, and community life in the North American Southwest and its celebrations. In 1900, Carl Everton Moon traveled through indigenous territories of North America to record, in images, what emerged from there: ways of life, rituals, landscapes, and narratives. His goal was to preserve these memories at the turn of the 20th century, when Western expansion and new frontiers rapidly reshaped the daily lives of these peoples. Photographed in the 1880s in the territory of New Mexico, a woman of the Taos Pueblo people appears in dark wool attire, shawl on her shoulders, turquoise necklaces, and traditional hairstyle. In the background, adobe houses reveal collective life. Her presence evokes rituals, market exchanges, and a calendar guided by agriculture between floods and droughts. In the 1880s, Marcia Pascal, a woman of Cherokee descent and daughter of Officer George Pascal, moved through a transforming landscape. In the wake of the Civil War, westward expansion, railroads, and new legal frameworks reshaped the Indian Territory and mixed communities, imposing choices and opening breaches for unprecedented trajectories. In 1894, a Kiowa woman lived in the former Indian Territory, today Oklahoma. After the Plains Wars and the fixing of boundaries, her people faced changes that shook economy and spirituality. Pressing ceremonies, language, family roles, and village life, once sustained by alliances with neighboring peoples and memory. United States, 1900. A young Indigenous woman appears in ceremonial attire of her nation. The scene marks the turn of the century, when Native peoples dealt with territorial losses and changes in autonomy. The clothing and adornments signal community ties and cultural persistence amid rapid transformations, recording resistance and memory. In 1899, Frank Reinhardt photographed Hattie Tom, an Apache woman. The scene takes place at the end of the 19th century, when the U.S. West was being reshaped and indigenous peoples asserted identities in the face of new civil powers. Framing and adornments indicate cultural choices and a conscious way of presenting oneself to the world, an image that suggests agency and memory. Elsie Vance Chestuen, of the Chiricahua, enters Apache history of the Southwest at the end of the 19th century. Amid campaigns and forced relocations, the clans preserved ties, alliances, and subsistence routes. Her name evokes imprisonments, removals, and contact with army posts on the Mexico-United States border and the limits imposed on movement. In the 1886 image, Lizzie Longwolf joins Buffalo Bill's show in the Wild West tours that shaped the memory of the frontier. Her presence reveals the format of the show: rehearsed cavalry, exhibition shooting, and choreographed numbers, assembled to sell the public a version of the West, crafted to appear as both history and spectacle. In 1895, the photograph portrays a young Hopi, a Pueblo people of the mesas of Arizona. Her clothing and adornments reveal her family and life stage. At the end of the 19th century, encounters with railroads, merchants, and researchers increased, while seasonal rituals continued to guide collective life. Tradition and outside contact intertwine. In 1899, Frank Reinhardt recorded Hattie Tom, a Chiricahua Apache woman. Under the ethnographic gaze, the photograph reveals adornments, hairstyle, and fabrics that indicate the group's techniques and identities. Her calm posture suggests memories of forced relocations and alliances formed after the Apache Wars, echoing contacts and changes in daily life. In 1886, the photograph of Isabel Perico Njadi, a Chiricahua Apache woman, portrays a prisoner of war at the end of the campaigns in the U.S. Southwest. Her figure, tied to Geronimo's surrender and the captures that followed, reveals how military advance and land occupation reshaped the lives of indigenous peoples throughout the region. Around 1900, the photograph records Alice, possibly connected to the Cayuse, Walla Walla, or Umatilla of the Columbia Plateau. Expression, garments, and adornments indicate this belonging. The period brought together treaties, relocations, and changes in the Pacific Northwest. In facing her, one hears the echo of the transformations that redrew lives and territories. In 1885, the photograph portrays a young Comanche. The hairstyle, beads, and fabric suggest crafts and exchanges on the southern Great Plains. It is a time after the fall of the bison and confinement to defined areas, changes that redirected the community's mobility, clothing, and forms of sustenance, and its living collective memory. Around 1900, the photo records a young Hopi woman on her wedding day. On the Arizona Plateau in the villages, the ritual sealed alliances between families and clans. Finely crafted fabrics and shell and turquoise adornments reveal transmitted skills, while the hairstyle and the items offered announce the entry into adult life and the continuity of the group. In the 1886 photo, Julie Nelson appears aligned with the social codes of the late 19th century. Dress, hairstyle, and posture signal the respectability demanded by an era of urbanization and rising industry. The way she faces the lens and holds her pose reveals control and self-awareness before the camera of that time. In 1895, George A. Addison presents Amy and Carrie Kiowa, two figures on Kiowa Island on the South Carolina coast. In the post-Reconstruction period, when the barrier islands balanced fishing and cotton, clothing, gestures, and utensils reveal routines guided by tides and exchanges, uniting local lives with the rhythm of coastal trade and environment. In the 1880s, young Comanche women sustained collective life. They cooked, raised, and moved camps, tanned leather, and led exchanges that maintained mobile economies tied to buffalo hunting and trade. Guardians of languages, songs, and rituals, they wove kinship and alliances, preserving cultural continuity amid changes on the plains.